The following is a paid program that is paid for by AARP of Michigan.
Artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. There are days you just want to pull the covers over your head and put your money in your mattress and say forget about it. But we're not going to do that because you're going to learn so much today from one of the nation's top 25 cybersecurity experts, Dan Lohrmann. How are you, Dan?
Thanks for having me, Paula. I'm doing great.
A top 25 national experts in cybersecurity. I mean, you think of all the people working in that space, and you're one of the top 25 experts, and you're sitting here with us. So let's get down to it. First, let's get a common definition, understanding what is cybersecurity, what is included in that title.
Yeah, so really protecting your data, protecting your computer systems, but really all the different types of technology that we use, from smartphones to laptop computers to banking to interactions. Really, how do we protect ourselves as we use cyberspace, as we use technology both at home and work?
And so, having said that, because I mean, one of those, there are people who still think the microwave is listening to them, you know, but having said that, for you to be one of the top 25 experts, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got that distinction.
Well, thank you. I started my career at the National Security Agency in Washington, and my family moved to England, worked with Lockheed and Mantech, so working in the intelligence community for about 13 years, and then 17 years in Michigan government. So right here in Michigan, living outside of Lansing, and working as Chief Technology Officer and Chief Security Officer for the state of Michigan. I've written 3 books. So my latest book, Cyber Mayday and the Day After, is...
Say that again, the title again?
Cyber Mayday and the Day After.
Okay.
And then the secondary title is A Leader's Guide to Preparing, Managing, and Recovering from Inevitable Business Disruption. So when companies get attacked, have a data breach, have a ransomware attack, how do they respond? What do they do before, during, and after?
Wow.
So those are just some of the things that I've been involved in. And now with Presidio, I am a field chief security officer. So work with companies and governments across the country on protecting themselves.
And across the nation, the world as well. You're doing some international travel?
Some international, yes.
Yeah, because you have to find those dark web people who are in India and all over the world, right? So
mostly U.S.
Mostly U.S. Okay. Well, so let's get at it. When people talk about artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, we scare people sometimes.
Yep.
And yet there's so much good that comes from all of this technology as well. But let's talk today about how people can protect themselves. There's so many scams out there. How do you know what's real, what's not real? We've seen things like with Anderson Cooper, with artificial intelligence, Anderson Cooper in person, and you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So how can people tell the difference in terms of what's real and the truth in technology?
Yeah, I think, Paula, you made a really good point that, first of all, I'd say AI is a great tool that is used, in so many positive ways for healthcare, for in hospitals, at home, and with our smartphones, we can, where we used to do, searches and things, and now we can get questions answered so easily. So it's a really great thing, but it also can be used for evil as well as for good, right? So there's an acceleration in the technology in both directions at the same time. So we're seeing things like scams with people imitating someone's voice, video, pretending to be, your boss, pretending to be somebody pretending to be a bank representative or something. So the first thing that they often do is they try and imitate and get your trust. And that can happen in a wide variety of ways. We're going to go through some examples of that, but whether that be phone scams, whether that be texting, phishing emails, and these are some of these things you say, well, we've heard those before in the past, but with AI, it's becoming much broader. It's happening many more times than it was, and it's becoming much more sophisticated. The bad guys are getting way better, much better at what they do, and so it looks so real.
And so you try to get more people to use the technology because you don't want to get them left behind.
Yep.
But what do they need to know in order to protect their software, their bank accounts? What do they need to, when you say the phishing and things look real, how can you tell, how can you distinguish what's real and what's not?
I think we're going to go through a couple of examples.
Okay.
We're going to walk people through some of those. But I would just say, starting off, the most important thing to start off with is identity, and are you really who you say you are? And I think that's the first thing is the challenge of somebody calls you up, anything that's unsolicited. So you get a phone call saying, and sometimes they even pretend to be a security company. I'm here from your bank, and I'm from the security department. You're a victim of fraud. So even posing as someone trying to help you, right? And in reality, they're not. So verifying who that person is, and that's really the first most important thing, because they're going to try and win your trust. They're going to try and create a sense of urgency. They're going to try and create a sense of helplessness, get you worried, emotional attachment, get you to and then take a series of actions. One thing that's happening now a lot, and I'm going to walk through some of those examples we can put on the screen for the people, but is that we're seeing a lot of examples where people are really, it may be even slower than it used to be. So they realize that, hey, I have a job opportunity for you. Hey, I have you won an award. A once-in-a-lifetime deal, whatever it might be, and they maybe go 1 or 2 or 3 steps down the line before they say, well, now I need $100. Now I need your money. Now I need, in order for me to process this, something needs to happen. And in every area of life, they try and gain your trust, and then they utilize that trust to then steal your identity, steal your money, gain access to your bank account, which is that's a high dollar value thing, because if they can get your access to your bank account, get you to send a text, and if you get that multi-factor authentication, get you to send that code to them, and they can then gain access themselves. They can then drain your bank account. So those are the kinds of things that the first most important thing is trust. Who are you dealing with?
Yes.
Who is this really? And if it's unsolicited and it's coming at you, there's a good chance that it's a fraud.
To verify that, and gaining that trust, that's an important factor. Just the other day, someone sent me something that Longhorn Steakhouse was, because of the economy and everything, they're giving out free meals to 2 people if you click here and I looked at that, it was 859 people right away who had clicked on that. And those are think about it. That's a national chain. They're going to be giving everybody 2 free meals. So that's the kind of thing in terms of people just not thinking through what they're looking at and making certain that they gain trust. Let's look at some examples that you have.
Sure. So the first one we want to put up on the screen is from an email fraud impersonation. And if you notice this, a lot of times people send an email and it appears to be from, in this case, it was actually from a send talent. They were kind of buttering me up with this email, Dear Dan Lohrmann. I won't read the whole email here to you here, but it looks so official, but it really was coming from a Gmail account. So that's one flag right out of the gate. Not saying all Gmail is bad, but if you're really a reputable talent, trying to offer me a job,
you're not.
You're probably not a Gmail account. So then they put the person's name, in this one, Erica, and then they put .ascend talent agency, and then @gmail.com. So notice that in there. Notice also in here, they don't put a phone number. They don't, for contacts, and they don't. And if they did, they put meet my team. Click here. The challenge of verifying someone's identity, whether you use a Facebook or a LinkedIn, some way that that this person is legitimate. Don't just trust their links on their email, because they say to verify who I am, go here. In one case, I literally went back to someone and said, where's your LinkedIn account? I want to see how many connections you have. I want to see, or Facebook, or I want to know that you're legitimate. And they said, well, I'm not using that because I want this to be more personal. Red flag right out of the gate, right? So these were not real. So those are just some tips to look for, and really be skeptical if something is coming into you unsolicited. If it's coming at you, they're asking you to click on a link. They're asking you to do something. The second example we just want to put up is just. And these come, saying you owe a toll, you have a tax refund, or you owe money, or we know you haven't paid your taxes, but I'm here to help. This one was supposedly from the Michigan Department of Treasury, right here in Michigan, right? But interestingly enough, it came from plus 63, which is an overseas address. I've seen them come from plus 44, which happens to be the United Kingdom. So why would the United Kingdom be texting me with a Michigan, by the way, I know friends at Michigan Department of Treasury, and they don't send texts saying you haven't paid your taxes. So that's just not going to happen. So if you just think through this, but they In this case, they said your refund request has been processed. Go to this website, michigan.mobile.ziz.xin/US. Clearly, that's not a michigan.gov website. So, if you're looking at know what the reputable, if you have a question with a text or an email or any other form of communication to you, go to that organization directly. If it's Flagstar Bank, if it's whatever it might be,
or just call them even.
Call them up and you initiate to them and say, is this real? Is it not real? Because the reality is, in most cases, I'd say, I'm not gonna say all, but 99+% of the cases, if they're calling up, especially, they call up and they say, hey, I'm your bank, what's your account number? I mean, they have a red flag right there. But they create a sense of urgency. We have a problem, that something that's going to emotionally get your attention.
Right, and during certain times of the year, people will ask about, sign up for Medicare, and then we get all these calls, and give us we get this from older adults, last 4 digits of your Social Security number. You never want to give out any kind of personal information like that.
Exactly.
Right? And because with the last 4 digits or with your Social Security number, they have access to almost any files or any accounts that you have. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think, just thinking through all the different areas and what's happening with AI and how this is changing, it's moving so fast. And, you think many people out there, I think one of the biggest concerns I have is complacency. Is you say, well, I've been dealing with phishing attacks for years. I've been dealing with these issues for years, where they're getting better, they're getting much, much harder to detect. So I think, in the cybersecurity industry, we talk about zero trust. Doesn't mean you don't trust your family, your friends, but what that really is talking about is online, be very skeptical, especially when unsolicited emails, texts, contacts, phone calls come at you, and we want to respond because we want to trust the person on the other end of the phone. They sound so legitimate. The voice may even sound like one of your family members or your boss or someone because AI can really imitate that.
We used to always say trust but verify in the banking business. The same thing's true in cybersecurity. If you want to trust them, you got to verify that you can trust them. That's excellent. So the first thing is trust, verify who the person is, and then call or just kind of double check. And then the other thing, the sense of urgency. You said that if something's usually the action has to be taken right away, and those are red flags. Those are all red flags.
I've also seen them, another trick they says, well, if you don't want to respond to this, I'm going to have to escalate you to my boss. And so, so again, it's their person that, hold on, we're going to put you through to the supervisor. Well, the supervisor is their person, right? So, I mean, you're still back to the same thing. It's like, who is this person I'm talking to?
Dan, one of the things that still concerns me so much, because we've talked a lot about fraud and how to identify things, is that sometimes people can steal parts of your information and keep it for 5, 6, 7 years, or 10 years before you even know that it's gone. How do you know if that happens? What can you do? What are the steps people can take if your identity's stolen? If you think you've been a victim of some kind of fraudulent activity, what can they do?
Yeah, I think there's a number of steps people can take, and certainly if you feel like you have been a victim, and in any way that happened, immediately stop any contact with the scammer. So start off by really thinking through email, text, whatever they want to break off contact with them. Do not contact them any further. Secure your accounts. So that may mean changing passwords, contacting the company for sure, using two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. We haven't really talked about that very much, but most of the services you use, both the free services and banks may usually require it now, which is like a password and another step, not just a password, but a lot of people still don't even use that for things like, Gmail and Facebook and LinkedIn. But again, if you've been scammed, notify your bank and your provider. Freeze your credit. So that there's a number of ways you can do. You can freeze your credit. You can talk to all 3 credit bureaus: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. They have different tools that you can use to do that. You can also talk to Social Security Administration and Social Security number. If you gave that out, you can go to www.identitytheft.gov. Identitytheft.gov. You believe you're a victim of identity theft, you can go there. Certainly, as I mentioned, notify those organizations. And then we can report the scam. So there's a website called reportfraud.ftc.gov. report fraud at ftc.gov or call 877-FTC-HELP. These are organizations that are in place to help us. Others are FBI crime, state attorney general's office. You can file a complaint even to your local police. So all of these things, you report to law enforcement. Those are some of the examples we can put on the screen and we can show you. I also would tell people afterwards, we need to be monitoring your credit report for unauthorized activity. Consider identity theft protection services. So that would be, a number of different organizations, including the credit bureaus, can offer you protection to monitor your report and tell you if fraud is happening. Last tip I'd give on this is, even as people are thinking about, they get a letter in the mail, which happens a lot, from a bank or an insurance company or a business that they've been victim of a data breach and they're offering you 1 free year of protection or 2 free years of protection. You've got to sign up for those for them to take effect. I tell people, if they don't have any kind of credit protection, go ahead and sign up and that service, and they can check their credit report and they can see, is there something unauthorized in there? Watch out for those things.
That's excellent advice, and people just need to be a little bit more mindful and slow down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Don't click on that link quite so rapidly. When we talk about cybersecurity and AI, the breaches, the data breaches, like whether I won't name the department stores and the hospitals, and you're dealing with industry that have those breaches, and your information's in there. If you were, customer, patient, or whatever, what kind of protection can a person, what should a person expect? Should they expect that company then to protect them or to give them some kind of, like you were saying, some kind of 1 or 2 year protection service?
Yeah, certainly. So, there are laws in all 50 states around data breaches. And so if a bank or, a company you do business with has a data breach and your data is lost in some way, it's been accessed. Sometimes you'll get a letter that says, we have no indication that there's any, but anyone's used your information inappropriately at this time, but we're offering you credit protection. So a lot of times they will, phone companies, a number of the phone companies had data breaches, and they offered free identity theft
take
protection.
Take advantage of that.
Absolutely, sign up for those. I encourage that, and really make sure that as you work with those reputable companies, you know who you're dealing with. Because another point I would really want to emphasize here, Paula, is that more and more with AI and with fake, not just identities and fake people, like we talked about texts and emails, people are setting up fake companies and look-alike companies. So you think you're dealing with, I'm not going to name a reputable brand. It could be a Verizon or an AT&T or T-Mobile or whatever it might be. And in reality, they're not. They're actually dealing with some other company that may in fact be, scamming you and pretending to be somebody they're not, or a person pretending to be another person.
That's such excellent advice. We could talk about this probably for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, but there's some good that comes from all of this as well. And I don't want people to leave thinking that, this is really bad. I do want you to talk about some of the worst, most egregious kind of security interventions that you've seen. But talk about some of the good that happens and also, should people give out passwords, and what should they not give? The doctor's office asks for passwords. If you want to absentee ballot, they ask for personal information. Absentee ballot asks for personal information. Everyone's asking for your personal information. What can you do?
Sure. Well, I think the good is the AI. I'm an advocate for AI, actually. Yeah. I think technology, I've been in technology my whole career. There's always going to be a cutting edge way that whatever technology you use can be used for good or for evil. And you need to think of it in that text. AI is just the latest rendition of that. And the AI you use today is probably the worst AI you're going to use for the rest of your life. So it's always getting better. It's improving. There are a lot of tools out there you can use to protect yourself. Most companies you work with, whether that be the banks or the social media companies or others, they have tools. Go to those, use the tools that they provide. Use the login, multi-factor authentication, 2 steps. Facebook calls it password with another step. So use the tools they give you for free to protect yourself. If people are not complacent and they use those tools, then they will be able to effectively protect themselves. I believe you can do that.
And a longer password?
Longer password help. I like multi-factor and changing them regularly.
All of the above.
Changing them regularly, I certainly would say, especially if there's been a data breach.
And what's regularly? Every 3 months, 2 months?
Well, I think it really comes down to whether or not you reuse passwords. Don't reuse passwords.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in your career. You've been doing this for 30 years. And talk about how it's progressed. More people are on using technology, using this type of cybersecurity on AI, on Facebook. Is Facebook a bad thing for people? I see so much information out there. I'm not a big Facebook user, right? But I kind of troll other people. But I see so much information out there, and sometimes it scares me what people are putting on their social media accounts, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or whatever. Talk a little bit about social media.
I think everyone has a different level of privacy that they want. There are certainly some people that don't want to use Facebook or don't want to use Instagram or other tools. I think the majority of people do use social media, and I believe you can use it effectively. And I believe that the key is constantly keeping up with the latest tools and the techniques that even those companies provide for you, whether that be if they recommend another level of security, how you log in, how often, how wide you share. So what are your privacy settings? And that can play out in over time. It's not just social media in a sense of pictures and sharing information and family and friends and family reunions and those kinds of wonderful things, but it's more banking information as well. So apps like Venmo and apps, money apps, and even friends seeing how you spend your money. I would advise you to do those things in private.
Right.
And there are settings that you can use at Facebook. Who do you accept as a connection? Who do you trust in your network, and how wide is that net? Some people just accept everybody, and then they're sharing with everybody. Others will say, I'll use these tools, but I'm going to have a more private view of it, and I'm going to encourage less sharing and only on trusted friends that I know. So I think it really comes down to how your level of privacy is, and I would encourage you to make sure you go through those steps and decide for you and your family what's appropriate for your situation.
That's good. Put some guardrails up. Don't just open your accounts to anybody who wants to join. Young people like to have all the likes and have all the friends, but they need to have some counseling or some coaching, I should say, about doing that.
And I also think it's along those same lines, age appropriate. I mean, and I think we tend, as parents, I have 4 children. We tend to want to focus on, okay, well, this is the way we set up, Mary or Sarah or Bob when he was 4 and 6 and then 8. But as different ages, things change, but the technology changes as well.
Right.
So it's not even just, here's what we did for my son who's now 17, and well, it's different for that other 10-year-old now.
Right.
I mean, so one size fits all is probably not going to work all the way through those tween years, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So thinking through that, and it's a challenge because it's a moving target. And technology is changing.
Now you mentioned, and we want to get to the good stuff, but you mentioned Venmo, Apple Pay. Are those safe? Those different types of ways to pay, are they safe, or is there one safer than the other? I know
Absolutely. I think there are, and I think there are steps people need to take in those areas. They are safe, and I think the most important thing is that people are very open to looking at how they're using it, what their settings are. Again, really protecting their identity around that, multi-factor authentication, how they log in, thinking through different safety steps, and Venmo and all of them, all the ones you mentioned, Apple Pay, have training that they offer for free and can help you think through the steps. How widely do you want to share? You can literally share almost every purchase you make on Venmo so your friends can see that. Do you want to share that? I would encourage you not to do that.
Right.
But I think that, that's the most important thing. I think with each of these apps and banking apps, I use online banking. I see a lot of advantages to that. But I'm very, very particular about my security around how I log in, who has access, and then what I share.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the good things, all right? That this is so helpful, but artificial intelligence is really making a difference in our lives, in our medical world, in the world of education, everywhere, research. Talk about what you're most excited about as it relates to cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, the whole world of technology.
Yeah, I'm really excited about advances in medicine. I think what we're seeing as we head into 2026 is more and more AI agents in our lives. So in the past, it was like you ask a question, okay, with something like ChatGPT, and it's great because it answers a question for you. It can give you an outline. It can help you write your resume. It can really be very efficient for a lot of tools.
Right.
But it's going a lot further than that in the next phase. It's going to enable us as an agent to do things like find your Christmas presents for your families and target them, not just great deals, which are you can go out there on different shopping days, but also it's going to help you maybe do travel reservations and really be ultimately over the next several years an assistant, as if and I work for the state of Michigan. I had an executive assistant and she was amazing. Charlotte, if you're watching, hi. She was amazing, but like having an assistant who can really help me be more efficient, be more productive, make better decisions, find things when I maybe take steps that I shouldn't have been taking. Do you really want to do that and really kind of converse with you? You can do that via written and verbal. I think the tool sets are going to become much, much more powerful.
And how do you see that in terms of a security perception? What's the security risk in terms of all the information that ChatGPT they have a lot now, because you can put your whole profile in there and they spit out things that are just unique to your company. But in the future, if it's even more detailed than that, what are the security risks with that?
I think the biggest risk, honestly, AI is all about garbage in, garbage out from a data perspective. So if you're using the general purpose AI built, that is learning from the entire world and the entire internet and examples in Europe and everything else, it may not apply to my situation in Michigan, right?
Right.
Or your situation or whatever. But the reality is that if you have data sets that are clean, good data, and companies, thinking about that, or your individual organization that you're a part of, and that data decisions are being made on that data, I think you're going to get a good result. If the data is flawed, if it's hacked, if it's somehow been manipulated in inappropriate ways, or is a wider set of data, you're going to get bad answers, right? So that's where AI challenges are existing, and how do we control that data? How do we control the models to make sure that we're making the right decisions with the right data?
Wow, it's so powerful. On one hand, it's kind of, you've got to beware, buyer beware. On the other hand, you've got to not be left behind, because it's medical, like you said, medical education, just everyday life. It's going to change people's lives. So give people some advice as you close this out. What would you suggest that they do? If they had to do 3 things from listening to this, what would they be?
Well, I'll give you one quick one, and that is, don't be complacent. It's always changing. Get on top of this. It's, train yourself and continue to learn, because this is an evolving space.
I appreciate that. We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm so glad that you were one of the top 25 cybersecurity experts in the country, and you're right here with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it, Paula.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following: